You're listening to the Monday Night Community Show with Daniel on BRFM.
We present The Real Storm in a Coffee Cup with Philip Sheehan and Katie Williams.
Sorry about the weather, Miss Barrett. Not quite the season for it, but I'm guessing you good people of England even have storms.
We do, and no one can control the wind and the rain.
Not even in this great nation of ours. I'm not saying that England isn't a fine country too. I wouldn't want your readers to get the wrong impression of us over here.
To a lot of people, Mr. Rhodes, the special relationship appears strong and healthy.
Hell, it sure is. The President called it essential. It's only when the Brits and the Yanks get together that anything ever gets done in this world.
You said that in the Senate recently.
I did, and I went further. If God had not intended for our two countries to work together, he would never have put us in a position of global superiority, wouldn't he?
Yes, I believe you did, in fact, say something very much along those lines.
I said it was our God-given duty to bring democracy and the freedom of the markets to all, especially in those parts of the world where they are not currently enjoyed.
You did indeed, Mr. Rhodes.
Please, little lady, call me Edwin. Everybody does.
Thank you. Catherine.
So, what can I tell you? What would you like to know? I'm an open book. Just check the internet.
Senator, you are now in your second term. To what do you owe your success?
Well, Catherine, I believe in telling it like it is. If I see a spade, I'll call it so. I don't pussyfoot around the topic. I like to think that I go to the heart of the problem, and people around these parts appreciate that kind of honesty. If you're a straight talking shooter, people respect that.
Yes, but for all the positive stories about your local programmes, there has been, even in the media here, some less complimentary stories about your private life.
People will say all sorts of things, Catherine. This is, after all, the land of the free.
And free speech is something you have promoted even before you reached public office. You bought a local newspaper, the Fishkill Chronicle, almost a decade ago now. The paper itself had been through some very lean times before you owned it.
Sad to say, Catherine, the Chronicle was in need of a revamp.
Then, 6 years ago, you brought up a local TV station, SWF News, which also has some radio stations and a couple of sister channels out west, and one of 2 other publications across the country.
SWF was in trouble at the time. The world recession was starting to bite, advertising revenues were down, people were falling behind with their mortgages.
And your consortium has since purchased several other news outlets.
I am only the face people know. The corporation now employs some thousands of people.
Do you ever try and control the news agenda?
I'm a politician, Catherine. Of course I try and control the news agenda.
Had any success?
None. I believe in the freedom of the press. When I took over at the Chronicle, I said to Ryan Davis, the editor at the time, print the news, wherever it leads.
Even if it leads to you?
It's true, I won't try and hide the situation. The truth is, I've made mistakes. I too woke up one morning to find myself the subject of the Chronicle's attention.
How did you feel about that?
Well, the Chronicle had a story and they pursued it. Well, what can I tell you? Yeah. They did the very thing I told Davis to do. The fact that it was me in the headlines was unfortunate.
This was the story you had spent the night with 2 ladies of a dubious profession?
Very British. Yes, the Chronicle alleged that I had wined and dined 2 women and then taken them back to my hotel room where they spent the night.
And you denied their version of events.
Of course I did. There was never 2 women.
I see.
There was 3! And I never tried to stop them from publishing, or the ladies from speaking.
Each of which did reveal the night's activities in quite some detail.
Hell, they were just being kind. I could never have done all those things they said I did. I was never that flexible, and certainly never had that kind of energy.
And then, later, one of your TV affiliates got wind of allegations of other private parties you threw, in which you encouraged guests to dress up in all sorts of strange and colourful costumes.
Again, I feel I must hold my hand up and admit my guilt.
And at the Capital Business Forum 5 years ago, to encourage the financial community to set up in your state, you told them to move here because, and I quote, "We have the best-looking girls around."
And we do! Just walk down Main Street.
You also said that in the election for the governor of Wyoming, the people had a choice between a crook and a drunk.
And the crook won.
You also described President Yuri Belikov of Eastern Europe of having fashioned the biggest purge since Stalin.
And that man has killed thousands of his own people.
Oddly diplomatic language.
You can't always use diplomatic language, Catherine. When you are facing a tyrant, you have to say so. They were big boys and girls. They could take it.
And in each case, the story of your infidelities and misspeaking was broken to the waiting world by one of the very news outlets within which you just happen to be a major shareholder.
That's the price of freedom, Catherine. I can't gag what the reporters choose to write about or broadcast.
You have no influence over what, for example, the Fishkill Chronicle puts on its front page?
Not at all.
Even though you are the man that saved that paper from going to the wall.
I was only one of many.
This would be your consortium?
That's it.
The NA Spring Consortium?
North American Spring Consortium.
And you are, I have discovered, the major shareholder. Without you, there is no NA Spring. There is no Fishkill Chronicle or SWF TV station or any of the other news outlets that either A, break all your scandals or B, keep you in the media.
Shouldn't you be making some notes there, little lady?
You're on the banking committee with oversight of the Treasury. You voted for the bailout of the banks on Wall Street.
Many of us did.
The very same banking institutions that almost brought the US to its knees.
Not one of our finest hours.
Leading to QE1 and then QE2.
Quantitative easing was considered a necessity by all.
Some think there may even be a QE3.
And why do they think that?
The greater supply of currency, the less the face value of that money. The currency in question, of course, is the dollar.
What of it?
And the only solution put forward to tackle this nation's bill seems to be to raise the debt ceiling.
I believe everything is on the table.
The dollar is the world's reserve currency.
I've heard that said before.
China, it is said, holds some $1.16 trillion worth of US Treasury securities.
China is tied very firmly into our debt right now. That is true.
And yet gold is at an all-time high, about $1,500 an ounce.
I think you are trying to tell me something.
The value of gold is rising, and that can only be because the wealthy are buying up the supplies of precious metals.
You've got very pretty legs. Did I tell you that before?
As the average American is facing the threat of losing their jobs, leading to welfare...
Well, you are definitely one of the best-looking gal reporters I've met from England yet.
And the subprime scandal is leaving those that can afford to keep their properties, with houses that are now worth half, if not less, from what their mortgages were when they took them out.
You've got good childbearing hips.
While the wealthy insulate themselves from the effects of what they helped bring about.
Hell yes, you are one tasty lady.
And after printing the dollar into oblivion and securing the wealth of the top 1% of the top 10 into something physical before reducing the value of the paper currency to pennies, then you will introduce a brand new global reserve currency.
Such as?
Either the Amero, as a unified currency between the US, Mexico and Canada, or SDRs, special drawing rights.
And you worked all that out on your own?
Even in Britain, we could see that the financial collapse was engineered here in the US. If you've ever worked in someone else's business, you quickly learn how limited your own power is to get anything done. Your banks didn't give out billions of dollars on subprime mortgages without those at the top knowing exactly what was going on. Incompetence was only put forward later as an excuse.
And what conclusions have you reached?
You created your news network to keep yourself in the public eye. The greater the scandal, the more popular you became. The more flawed, the more a man of the people you seemed.
I'm in politics. I play to the lowest denomination.
And while people read about your wild parties, see you on TV or the internet, they don't ask about your financial committee and the 50 million Americans on food stamps.
There are plenty of people who write about economics.
But most of us focus on the things we understand.
You seem to understand more than most.
Are you planning to run for president?
Once upon a time, young lady, it was believed that any politician worth his bottom dollar would have to master the skills of performance. Raising and lowering of the voice. How to stand, where to position the camera, maybe even when and how to cry to order. Then an ex-actor actually got elected. And there was little point learning how to appear to be an actor. You now have to be an actor appearing to be a politician. And like all great performances, harder the task becomes, the easier you try to make it look. You have to command the stage, even if it's a comedy. So, in answer to your somewhat impertinent question, not only must the show go on, but it must continue to go on and on. The citizens of this great country are not interested in what goes on in Capitol Hill. Why would they be? That's why they have C-SPAN. And we're only passing laws that affect their lives. To read about my latest sexual escapades gives them something to like. Hate, cheer, and condemn, all in equal measure. And they rarely ask what I do to fill my time.
So the whole thing is just a Broadway show?
Oh no. Theatre piece is by definition fake. My profession is believed by many to be the real deal. Have I given you enough for your article?
I already had more than enough.
Then tell me why you came here today, if it wasn't to confirm what a sexist, chauvinistic, good-time boy that I am. If you believe you've seen behind the curtain, then what did you want as a reward?
Your pledge.
My pledge? My pledge to what?
I want your word that no matter how much of a scoundrel you make yourself out to be, you'll always try and remain a good man. And try and do your best for the people.
That might not be as easily said as done. It's usually far simpler to be a rogue than to be an honest man.
That's my price.
I'm in the political profession. People expect me to sink to a certain level.
Raise their
I
expectations.
spent years trying to lower them.
But will you try?
People vote for the reprobate. They don't vote for the good guy.
Appear the scoundrel, but be the honest man.
When I become president?
I'll be your director of communications.
So, you want to be brought into the heart of power. They say that all power corrupts. Or is it the desire for power that corrupts?
Which is why it will need a good man to wield that power.
And all of my scandals? What of them?
I'm sure that we could manufacture a few more.
Won't that be a problem?
I wouldn't worry about them. Each one will prove to be a little more than a storm in a coffee cup. Do you agree, Mr. President?
I surely do.
In The Real Storm in a Coffee Cup, Katie Williams was Catherine, and Philip Sheehan was Edwin. Artwork for the production was by Sheila Jackson, and the play was written and directed by John Fryer. The Real Storm in a Coffee Cup is an audio production for Political Art.